The road into Rome is a long, straight line when you've got nowhere left to return. I drove all night. The phone rang 3 times, blocked number. I let it ring. People who want your head don't call to talk. They call to confirm you're still breathing. The email hit at 03:14. Subject: termination of services. 4 neutral paragraphs, 2 lines that mattered. The Holy See will no longer require your expertise. Please return all items, keys, and credentials. Signed by someone who never looked me in the eye while I held things that shouldn't exist. I knew it was coming. When the church decided it needed in-house hunters with modern training, it was a clock ticking. They don't want men taught in the cold by Tibetan monks. They want teams with thermal optics, protocols, uniforms with discreet crests. They want control. I was never controllable. I was efficient. I stopped at a service station off the Solaria. Bitter coffee, cold hands. Behind the glass, the TV replayed a news loop with no sound. Subtitles mentioned a fire in a sub-basement archive in Verona. I recognized the corridor. I'd been there years ago, following the smell of burnt leather and old iron. When I paid, I saw the reflection in the window. A man sitting in a car across the road, not drinking, not on his phone. Too young to be awake by choice. They'd already started. Back on the road, I swapped my SIM card, the third of the night, and dropped the old one in the trash. At 5:20, the sky turned gray. 50 kilometers out, I took a maintenance exit toward a dam. Concrete waterfalls drown footsteps. Good place to check if you're being followed. I was. 3. 1 high, 1 in a car, 1 on foot trying to look like a jogger. Classic posture from people who think tech does the job. I stepped out of the sightline of the high point and dropped behind the inspection band. The walker came first. Black wristband on the left. Tiny blue pulse. Closed comms. When he passed the gap, I was already behind him. I don't want to hurt a kid, I said quietly. He spun fast. Coarse posture. Tried to say, hands where I can. But the sound died when the blade touched between the ribs, just enough to change how he breathed. Kill the bracelet. You're terminated. This is a peaceful transition. Kill it. He obeyed. The blue went dark. How many? Silence. You know how this works. I only ask once. 3. Who's up high? Don't know names. We don't use names. Smart. I pinned him to the concrete, took his radio, and keyed the channel. Static first, then a flat voice. Unit 2, status. Software's frozen, I said, matching the tension of someone who thinks they lost the link. Rebooting. The carman got out. The high point shifted. Sync error. They were rushed. Their hurry was my edge. I climbed the service ladder, 2, 3, 4 flights. The high point had a hard case open. A drone clipped in. An IR sensor warming up. New Vatican, I thought, seeing the crest stamped into the fabric. He didn't hear me. When the blade tapped the case, he turned. Eyes wide, manual line on his lips. I didn't let it come out. Look at me, I said. He did. That second matters. It's when they get they're not in some filtered training sim. He chose life. Dropped the case. I kicked it away. His free hand went to his belt. I shook my head. No. He stopped. I disarmed him, cleared the mag, pitched it into the roar. The wind ate the click. Who sent you? Order 13. I know that name, not official. A sector that only exists when convenient. Why my head? You know too much. Everyone knows too much. The difference is what they do with it. The radio in my pocket crackled again. Unit 2? Report. Coming down, I said. False alarm. Hold position. Eyes on the objective. He glanced at me when he heard objective. He understood. I was a job. Listen, I told him. Walk away. You didn't see me. Go home. He hesitated. Then he nodded. I let him keep his life and nothing else. Down below, the jogger's spot was empty. He'd moved to flank. The car door was open, engine on, trunk half raised. I walked into view on purpose. The flanker committed, stepping out with a compact launcher cradled low, safety off. New tech. Quiet. Efficient. Wrong target. I cut left. The first dart kissed concrete where my head had been. The second hit the rail. The third I caught in the edge of my jacket. The gel hissed, chewed a hole in fabric, and bled smoke. Good to know what they're carrying. I closed the distance. He tried to reset stance, too late. I took his wrist, folded the weapon into the gravel, and fed him the rail. He slumped without a word. I pocketed a single vial from his belt. Clear glass. No label. The liquid shimmered like oil in water. I would test it later, if I lived. That's when the air tasted like pennies. Not the dam, not the river. Something else. The wind went still. A shadow cut across concrete with nothing to cast it. Late, I said to the empty space. The voice came from the wrong angle. Early. For you. He didn't step out. He didn't need to. The smell of cold iron and burnt sugar folded into the breeze. It pulls memory out of your bones if you let it. Talmor, I said. Hunter. We don't shake hands. Men like me and things like him don't ritualize accidents. I didn't call you, I said. You didn't have to. A ripple in the shadow, an outline that wasn't there a blink ago. You're loud tonight. I'm terminated. I noticed. The shape tilted. They hired children. Modernization. He hummed. It sounded like a coal seam catching flame. You killed 3 of my brothers in Asta. They were eating a family. They were warned. Pause. I owe you one still. Naples. He meant the night on the pier, the body in the water, the whisper at the edge of my ear telling me not to look left. I didn't look. I lived. Debt settled then, I said. Not yet. The shadow shifted toward the road. Walk. I don't argue when the air goes that static. We moved along the service lane, away from the dam. Behind the maintenance shed, 3 figures waited in a triangle. Clean boots, fresh gear, matching stances. They shouldn't have found this route. Which means they weren't tracking me. They were tracking him. You brought a choir, I said. They think they did. The first lifted a hand, 2 fingers to his temple, a signal to someone watching. The second checked the wind. The third watched me, not the shadow at my back. Hunter, the middle one said, voice amplified just a hair. By authority vested. Talmor spoke without sound. The space in front of us inverted like heat haze in winter. A seam opened, thin, vertical, wrong. The smell bent. My teeth hurt. Don't, I told the middle one. He smiled. High and tight hair, 2 white teeth. New rules. He fired first, a wide cone of cold that gnawed the seam's edges. Bad idea. The seam fed. The wrongness thickened. The wind went inward. Gravel slid toward the opening like the ground was exhaling. Step back, I said. Stand down, he said. Talmor didn't warn them. He doesn't warn. Honor isn't mercy. The seam widened a hand's width and became distance, black that wasn't color. The first man lost his footing like the hill got steeper. The second grabbed him, lost leverage, and both went on their knees. The third tried to anchor with the launcher. The kick took him anyway, boot heels carving 2 clean lines in the dust. They didn't scream. Professionals don't. The sound that came out of the seam wasn't for human throats. Enough, I said. The shadow held. Debt cleared. The wind stopped. The seam snapped thin and vanished like a bar of shadow lifted off the world. The gravel settled. The maintenance shed was suddenly just a shed again. I looked at the place where they'd been. 3 sets of tracks ending at a line of nothing. You could have done that to me, I said. Could, he said. Didn't. Why? Because you look me in the eye. A pause like a smile you don't want to see. And because this is their move, not yours. Whose? He didn't answer. He stepped where the shadow was thickest, and the shape unraveled. Talmor, I said. The voice came from the concrete. Go home, Hunter, or go where you were born. Not home. The other then, the cold place. I knew he meant the roof of the world, where men learn to breathe thin and think slow, where I learned to put names in boxes and never open them unless the night demands. What about the ones who signed my paper? I asked. Tonight, he said, and the air went empty. We will talk of honor. I stood there with the smell of burnt sugar fading, and the soft hiss of the dam chewing the quiet. The phone vibrated in my pocket. A new number, a new voice. Turn yourself in, it said. Calm. Genderless. This can end I looked at the tracks in the gravel, ending at nothing. I hung up. I drove before the sun hit the face of the reservoir, took back roads until the stations changed languages, and watched the rear view until the world shrank to a tunnel of gray. By the time the Ring of Rome was a smear in the rear view, the world had narrowed to switchbacks and frost. The first monastery sits on a ledge you don't find by accident. If you're meant to find it, the road stays clear. If you're not, the weather decides for you. I parked a kilometer down and climbed on foot, my breath threading into the cold. The bell didn't ring when I pulled the cord. It hasn't rung in 30 years. The door opened anyway. The porter was older than the door. He looked at the knife at my hip, the cut fabric on my jacket where the gel had burned through, and said nothing. He stepped aside. Stone swallowed me whole. Inside smells like wood smoke and tea, like dust warmed by prayer. A calendar on the wall said June 3 years ago. It's always June in places like this. Time is a circle when you make it a circle. I sat cross-legged on a mat that remembers knees. The tea arrived without a request. Metal cup, bitter leaves, steam like a thin ghost. Across the room, a shelf held stubborn books that never leave. You don't take knowledge out of the mountain. If you need it, it comes to you. Order 13, I said to the empty air, because here emptiness listens. They've decided I'm an operation. The mountain doesn't answer the way people want. It lets your words hang until they get heavy enough to drop on their own. When the steam thinned, a second cup appeared, someone else's. He sat down where the light made him a silhouette, not a face. You always come when the weather changes, he said, barely above the breath of the brazier. Weather changed fast. He watched the knife. Hunters watch edges on instinct. They cut you loose. They upgraded. Upgrades make men soft. Soft men make mistakes. He let that sit. The wall clock didn't tick. It suggested the idea of ticking. Outside, the wind leaned on the shutters and decided not to come in. You want sanctuary, he said. No. I sipped the tea. I want a slope with only one approach. That isn't sanctuary. That's a plan. I don't pray for outcomes. I shape them. Your kind never did pray. Not properly. We both know better. He stood, joints complaining, and moved like a shadow with weight. You can take the east cell. It hears the snow before it falls. The shelf holds tools. Not yours, not theirs. Ours. Payment? He shook his head. We'll take it in quiet. Quiet is the coin up here. You spend it slowly and hope it buys you one more dawn. The east cell was the width of a mattress and a thought. Blankets that remember bodies. A little window cut into the cold. I locked the door with a wooden bar you can break with a shoulder if the shoulder knows how. Mine does. I set a trip on the bar anyway. A thread of hair, a splinter, a habit. The shelf held 3 tools. A length of braided cord blacker than the room, a bell the size of a fist with no clapper, and a pouch of earth tied with a red string. No labels. Labels make men lazy. You carry what you understand. I pocketed the earth, tucked the cord into my jacket where a seam used to be, palmed the bell, felt the hum that lives in metal made for one sound only. Stop. I slept without dreams, and woke to the mountain teaching breath again. When you've been away too long, you have to ask your lungs to be serious. At sunrise, I went to the wall. The view makes men write poetry if they're not careful. The ridge to the north cuts the sky. The path to the cell door could hold 3 men shoulder to shoulder before it narrows to 1. A good bottleneck is a moral position. By mid-morning, the world found me. Not with sirens, with silence. Birds stopped mid-thought. The wind forgot its lines. Snow that had agreed to stay on the peaks glittered like it remembered other agreements. I walked the path to the first bend and stepped off it. The ledge below is not on any map. I lay flat, cheek to the stone, and watched the approach through a fern of frost. They came in 2s this time, smarter. No visible crests. Their gear didn't reflect. They wore the kind of boots that make no story on snow. New soles with the wrong patterns shaved off. They didn't speak. The lead held up a palm and the rear vanished into the rock, camouflage cloak that eats edges. Tech does that now, turns men into mistakes. I watched breath instead. Air is loyal to bodies. It trembles when it leaves them. I let them pass the bend. When their backs broke the line, I put the bell in my palm and didn't ring it. You don't ring true bells for men without names. Bells have memory. They prefer monsters. The cord was for men. I looped it twice around my hand, leaned into gravity, and dropped it like a promise. It caught the rear by the throat without sound. The lead felt the pull and pivoted. Good training, shallow instinct. He saw nothing. That's the trick. The cord drinks light. He cut air where something should be and found my knuckles instead. He slept without ceremony. I hauled the rear into the snow, laid him face down, and took the cloak. Cloaks make you less honest. I prefer to be seen. But I owed the mountain a few minutes. I checked their packs. Gel darts. Comms with no dial. 2 frequencies hard soldered. 1 for talk. 1 for listening to orders. A small device with a red cap and a plastic smell. Single use. I didn't like it in my hand. I liked it less in theirs. I pocketed nothing but the red cap thing and a folded paper in a clear envelope. Paper means whoever sent them doesn't trust the ether. Smart. The paper held a sketch of a face that could have been mine 10 years ago and 3 lines. Target, the hunter, authority, 013. Directive, immediate retrieval or irreversible containment. Not termination. Different budgets, different reports. They wanted me boxed, not burned. Which meant someone wanted to talk before they turned me off. I dropped back to the path and left their bodies where the snow would argue them into silence. I took 3 steps and stopped. The mountain made a sound you won't hear anywhere else, a long intake of breath from nowhere specific. Then a whisper came from beneath the path, not on it. You move louder than you used to, the voice said. Altitude. Age. Both. The stone ahead of me was not stone. It had a seam where no seam belongs. A hand pushed through, not flesh. Shadow knotted into shape, knuckles suggested by the idea of knuckles. Cold made visible. Travel light, it said. They travel heavy. It will slow them. I didn't answer the shadow. You don't flatter predators with words. They will climb again before night, it added. The one who speaks for them has a clock and a promise. Promises break. His won't. He has your name somewhere he considers holy. I don't leave my name where men can reach. You left it with him. What does he call himself now? The shadow did something that might have been a shrug if it had shoulders. There is a room under a city where he touches wood carved by men who wanted to make law out of thunder. He likes the sound it makes. Cardinal, then. It was always going to be a cardinal. Priests have souls to save. Cardinals have ledgers to balance. Will you stand there all day? I asked the stone. Until dark. To keep them out? To see you go. Where? Down. We weren't talking about the path. I felt the pouch of earth heavy in my jacket pocket. Red strings remember hands. Dirt remembers everything. Not yet, I said. Soon, it said. The seam healed. The rock went back to being honest. I returned to the cell and made the kind of lunch you make when food is a task. Bread like a brick, cheese that fights back, tea that explains sorrow. While I chewed, I wrote on the back of the paper I'd taken. Pencil, small script. If you're reading this, it's because you think you won. The mountain keeps better accounts. I slid the paper into the crack behind a beam. Mountains eat secrets and feed them back to men when they've earned them. By late afternoon they tried again. They came from above this time, ropes whispering, hooks that kiss stone, a pattern you teach on a whiteboard and forget on a cliff. I let 2 lower into the kill zone and cut the rope of the 3rd. He learned to fly and then to stop. He did both badly. The first 2 panicked by discipline. Exactly the wrong kind of panic. One made a circle with his hand. The other answered with a fist. Codes borrowed from special units they never suffered in. I cut one just enough to decide to live, then kicked his friend's knee into a new shape and let him consider how walking had been easier before. Order 13, I said to the one who could still hear through the pain. Who sits in your chapel? He pressed lips together in a line that thought it was brave. That room has no chapel. Then who holds your leash? He looked at my knife like maybe it would talk him out of honesty. Someone who thinks you're a file to close. Files don't bleed. Men do. He thinks both are the same if written correctly. That sounded exactly like a man I'd shaken hands with in corridors where nobody speaks above a murmur. He'd had eyes that didn't blink enough, and a way of smiling like someone else's joke. What did he promise you? I asked. The soldier breathed like the air cost more than he had. A blessing. I don't give those. He does. He doesn't have any to give. He says differently. Men who say differently get men killed. He tried to spit, mouth dry, dignity exhausted. You kill men. I kill problems. He laughed then, dry and short, like his ribs had opinions. That's what we call you. Good. Then write it down twice. He slept. I left them for the porter to find. The porter knows what to do with pain. He buys it back from the world with compresses and water and a voice you can step inside and rest. Night fell like a shut door. The monastery gets smaller after dark. The cells grow teeth. The corridors bend into themselves and sniff for fear. I lay on the mat and watched a crack in the ceiling consider becoming a map. The bell sat at my left hand, the knife at my right, the pouch of earth on my chest like a weight your heart will argue with. He came when the moon forgot to be sure of itself. Not through the door. Through the little window where cold writes its name. The room folded in one corner and unfolded around a shape that didn't pretend to be human. He didn't fill the room with threats. He brought quiet with him and set it down for me to decide what to do with it. Hunter, he said. Visitor. Do you sleep with the dirt on your heart for comfort, he asked. Or for aim? Both. Do you remember when we first counted the same stars? Men like us don't count. We mark. Yes? He tilted his head in a way that might make a boy cry if the boy hadn't run out of tears at 7. I went to see the one who draws lines around men and calls the drawing justice. Tonight? After I dropped your children into the dark. He tasted the idea. They are very new. New men are loud. What did he say? He asked me for a trade. Of course he did. He said he could give me a box with your name on it. The voice sharpened half a shade. He said he could put your head in it if I brought you to him with your tongue inside your mouth. And you said? I said boxes are for people who keep their promises. He doesn't. True. He said the word honor and meant favor. He said the word safety and meant fear. He said the word soul and meant ledger. Also true. I asked him if he knew what the word quit meant. Oh, what did he answer? He smiled with only the top of his mouth and said it means what he says it means. And then? I told him the accounting is almost balanced, that I had one more line to scratch out. The knot face turned fully toward me. The room dimmed half a breath. And then I told him I would come back when the line was gone to talk about honor. That got his attention. He put his hand on a table older than the people who made it and didn't look away. He won't look away again. I shifted, the mat crackling. You didn't open the seam under his chair. You would prefer I had? I would prefer you wait. For what? For me to be at the door when you knock. He was quiet for a length of time you measure in heartbeat counts, when you're not sure how many you have left. Then, why? Because men like him write stories on other men's skin and then pretend they didn't hold the knife. If you take him, they call it fate. If I stand there, they have to call it consequence. This sounds like prayer. It's not. Good. The corner of the room forgot to be solid for an instant. They'll come at dawn again, not 3, more. The one who has your name will not trust boys anymore. He'll hire men with mortgages. Yes. Those are worse. Yes. Can you keep the old man safe? The old man can keep himself safe. He smells like snow and iron and a woman who died before you were born. I like him. Good. I slid the pouch into my hand. The red string was tight. If I have to go down, I want to lift the floor on my own terms. Say the word and I'll open it. I'll say nothing. You'll know. He liked that. It's possible for a thing without a face to show approval if you've been in rooms with it long enough. Sleep, Hunter. Stay, I said. For what? In case I dream badly. You don't dream. Tonight I might. He stayed. I didn't sleep. The mountain breathed for me. Morning walked in on the heels of boots, not sneaking, not shy. 4, maybe 5. The 5th lighter. The rhythm of someone who rides desks and thinks stairs are a concept. I stood on the path and the wind tried to push me back into the doorway. I didn't let it. The men came into view one by one, then as a set, angles, lines, geometry of authority. The leader wore a radio in his ear that pretended not to be one. The one behind him carried a case with a confidence you only get if you believe in what's inside it. The 3rd scanned drift lines with eyes that know avalanche and budget. The 4th watched my hands. The 5th flinched at birds. They stopped at the bend. The leader put his hand up the way men do when they're used to being obeyed and not used to being Hunter, he said. voice like someone had sanded all the origins off it. By authority vested? Save that for rooms with carpet. You are under retrieval order. I'm on a mountain. Mountains are under God. Good thing he doesn't take orders from you. The faintest smile cut the side of his mouth. We can do this with dignity. You brought a case. Yes. What's in it? Paper. Lies then. Agreements. I don't sign. You don't have to. He nodded to the man with the case. The case opened. Inside, foam held 3 items. A circlet of black metal. A syringe with a painted line. A leather strap with a steel tongue. Containment, I said. Temporary. Define temporary. Long enough to make our point. You think I don't know your point. What is it? That you want to show me who writes the last line. You've already read it. I chew the pen. He glanced at the path, judged distances, decided on politeness. Step forward. Hands visible. Kneel. No. This is the place you want to die? This is the place I want you to learn. Learn what? That stairs matter. He didn't ask what I meant. Good leaders don't ask twice. He pointed. The third man moved to widen the angle. The fourth shifted to cover. The fifth took a breath like it was his first. I dropped the pouch of earth and dragged the red string with my thumb. The knot unraveled like it had been waiting. Dirt hit stone. The mountain remembered a name I'd given it 30 years ago, and folded a wrinkle into the path no map could argue with. The second man fell a fraction. Not much. Enough to change his aim. He shot a dart into the air and watched it come down like rain and hiss into the leader's sleeve. Gel-chewed fabric, tasted skin, found nothing to love, and died. The leader snapped his arm, shook the sting away, and looked impressed. Then not. Cute, he said. You brought boys. And one adult. The one with the case. Yes? The man with the case closed it calmly and set it on a rock like a picnic. We're not here to hurt you. You tried twice yesterday. Those were tests. Those were mistakes. That's what tests are. You sound like a catechism that lost its author. He looked at the bell in my left hand. He understood what it was without knowing its name. His mouth thinned a degree. Ring that, and someone else will come. Someone else is already here. He glanced at the window of my cell. The mountain doesn't have curtains, but it has eyes. He sensed a presence he couldn't purchase. The tiny hair at the nape of his neck made a decision and stood up on its own. You're consorting, he said. I'm surviving. Lines blur when men are tired. Lines are drawn where men stand, then stand over the ridge. Come take me. He didn't tell the boys to move. He moved first. He's the kind who understands that telling boys to move before you does something to you that you can't fix later. He stepped into the patch of earth that didn't agree with the rest of the path, and kept his balance with a knee that had lived through things. He reached for the circlet, not the strap. Smart. The circlet bites mind before it binds muscle. He wanted me quiet, not straight. I threw the bell at his hand. It doesn't need to ring to be a bell. It only has to be recognized as one. He checked the motion. The man with the case reached for the syringe. The fourth lifted the launcher. The fifth looked at the sky and wondered whose idea this had been. The ground tilted left the way a ship does when it remembers the ocean knows it better than it knows itself. The leader took the tilt and made it a choice, stepped into me, and locked my wrist with a move that belongs to men who've watched too many training videos. I let him think he had it and gave him the opposite. His eyes said he hadn't felt that before. Someone not resisting, not complying, redirecting. He let go on instinct and grabbed the strap instead. Bad pick, I said, and drove my head into his. Skulls are honest with each other. We both saw invitations to sleep and refused them. He blinked the world back into focus and started to smile because he likes people who hit back. Behind him, the third man put his foot where gravity was lower, and the path remembered the name I'd given it again. He kneeled when he meant to stand. The syringe kissed his thigh and told him to stop thinking. He did. Call it, I said to the leader. He breathed once, twice, measured the cold, and shook his head. Not yet. You're going to lose 2 more. Then I'll be even with yesterday. He's the kind you don't leave alive, not because he hates you, because he doesn't. The air changed, not the wind. The part of the world that ignores weather tilted a fraction. The leader felt it too. His eyes flicked to the corner of the cell window. He didn't see anything. He knew anyway. Now? The not voice said from behind the wall. Wait, I said without moving my lips. The leader didn't hear the word. He heard the silence bend around it. He's not stupid. He took one step back and lifted both hands, not in surrender, in math, calculating how many feet a man can fall before he stops negotiating. Walk, he told his boys. They didn't argue. The caseman gathered the case. The launcherman watched me like I'd rewritten a prayer. The fifth stared at the bell on the ground like maybe it would explain his future. They backed down the path slow enough to live through it. You'll take a call, the leader said. I won't. You will when you hear the voice. Voices don't move me. This one will. He smiled, not with his mouth. It owns a part of you you left on a table. I don't leave parts. You did that night in Naples. He said the word like a city could be a threat. He didn't know what else the word held. He didn't need to. He and I both turned the same way, to the corner where the room had been thinner in the dark. It was thicker now, watching. Tomorrow, the leader said. Sunrise. The line will ring. Answer it. Or what? I'll make this a siege. You won't like how that ends. I don't have to like it. He went. Boots, breath, discipline. The mountain kept count with me until they were small, and then nothing. I picked up the bell and set it back in the cell like you put a sleeping animal back in its nest. The pouch of earth was flat now, empty of all the names it once held. Red string went in my pocket. You don't leave threads out where men can find them. Men tug. The porter found me on the wall and handed me bread I didn't ask for. He looked at the path the way old men look at a boy they raised, and then at the knife in my hand like it owed him rent. They will be back, he said. They always are. Do you want us to leave a door unbarred? No. You want us to bar them all? Yes. He nodded. Approval, not agreement. You'll sleep a little in the afternoon. The body will decide. The body decides less than men think. Yours will decide for you. He was right. It took the choice out of my hands and put me on the mat. When I woke, the room was the color of old gold and new blood. Sunset does that when the sky remembers dying is a color before it's a verb. I cleaned the knife with a rag that's seen better stories and checked the cord for thirst. It was still black enough to drink a night. The bell hummed once under my fingers. Complaint or promise. Can't say which. The red string in my pocket warmed against my palm like a wire with current. At full dark, the world outside the cell flipped. Not like a switch. Like a page. A shape stepped into the corridor soundlessly and brought the night with it. Not the one from my window. A different night. Human height. Human scent. Paper. Ink. Money. Old wood. He didn't knock. He stood where the light would catch only the edge of his cheekbone and said a word I don't let myself like. Hello. I didn't step closer. You climbed too fast for a man who sits. I was carried. He took a single step, enough for the lantern to translate him. You look well. You don't. Sleep is a luxury. You don't buy luxuries. You inventory them. He smiled with the top of his mouth and not the bottom. The leader on the path had practiced that smile in a mirror until it fit. This one invented it. You heard my boys, he said. They can't carry you down, so they asked me to come up. I don't go where I don't choose. You always go where you choose. That's the problem. Your problem. The one I'm paid for. We watched each other breathe. I counted the blink. 3. He'd trained the blink out and then trained it back in for men like me. Men who count blink. Naples, he said softly. I didn't give him what he wanted. You sent children to my door. I sent them back to their mothers with new knees. They will walk again. Differently. Different is acceptable. Dead isn't? Dead costs me money. You have money. I like to keep it. He looked at the bell on the low table and the way my hand was near it without resting on it. He saw the cord coiled like a quiet snake. You keep pets now, he said. They're not mine. They act like it. They act like themselves. And you think that makes them better than us. I think it makes them honest. He thought about the word. Men like him chew words and spit out letters. You're not going to come quietly. I'm not going to come. You can't stay here forever. I only need 2 nights. What happens on the 3rd? You go to your office and decide to live longer. He exhaled a laugh with no mirth. You still talk like the old man who taught you to breathe thin. I still breathe. He took another step. The lantern flame leaned without wind. The corridor behind him went deeper, instead of longer. Order 13 isn't going away, he said. Orders go away when the hands that sign them do. You can't reach all the hands. I only need to reach one. He tilted his head. And then what? Then someone else learns the definition of quit. Brave word. Accurate. He turned without turning his back fully and let the mountain swallow his sound. At the stair, he paused. At sunrise, answer the line. If I don't? He looked over his shoulder, half a profile sharp as a coin cut wrong. Then I'll stop being polite. You were polite tonight? I came alone. He didn't. Something walked behind his shadow that doesn't breathe. But I didn't call it out. You don't embarrass men like him. They make you pay twice. He left. The corridor exhaled. The cell inhaled. The bell hummed once. The string cooled. The mountain kept its own counsel. I slept in pieces that didn't fit together, and when I woke, the day knew my name like a debt collector. Dawn broke thin. The line rang. Not a phone, not a bell. Something between. It rings different when men with rings on their fingers ask the world for your attention. It rings through bone, not air. I answered without touching anything. Here. You're awake. I try to be. We can still do this with dignity. You can try. Come down. No. He waited as if the pause would pull me like a tide. He'll come then. He already did. Not him. His voice changed a degree. The other. You shouldn't invite him. I didn't. He invited himself. A breath. He told me to speak the word honor when I saw you. And now that you've said it, I'm out of words. That must be new for you. It is. What do you want, Cardinal? He didn't ask how I knew. Men like him like being known. I want you to stop believing you are a court. I don't hold court. I hold lines. You killed things that shouldn't exist and called it work. I killed things that wanted to eat children. They were not the only things hungry. True. Come down. He softened it like a father. There's less oxygen up there. It makes men dramatic. Dramatic men write orders like yours. It was almost a smile. You have one day. Then what? Then I ask God for patience. He doesn't answer that one. He answers mine. Not tonight. Tonight already started. The line clicked without a click. The mountain said nothing. I stood on the path and watched two ravens argue over the rules of the air. They settled nothing. Ravens never do. I tightened the cord until it pushed back, set the bell on the stone where the sun could see it, and tucked the string behind my ear like a habit I'd earned. Footsteps again. Not boys. Not men who train on foam. Men who learn cost. They climbed like they'd lost things and wanted to lose more. Good. Those bleed reasonably. Behind me, the window darkened without cloud. He was there again, not because I called, because some nights promise mornings. Now? He asked. Soon. How many do you count? Enough. Do you regret not going down last night? No. You will. Probably. You still want to stand at the door when I speak to him. I want him to know I was there when the bill came. Then stand. I'll need you to open the way after. For you or for them. Where? The place that knows my first breath. The cold place. Yes. You'll be alone. I always am. Not tonight. No, I said. And let the bell decide whether it loved sound. It did. The note rolled down the path and didn't echo. Echoes require agreement. This was an announcement. The men below stopped because men stop when the world speaks without air. They came anyway. Good. I stepped forward and taught the first what it costs to reach a door uninvited. Dawn came thin and sideways. The mountain held its breath. Boots on stone told me they'd chosen numbers over brains. I waited at the bottleneck. Cord coiled on my wrist. Bell at my heel. Red string behind my ear. They appeared in pairs, then fours. Quiet. Faces chiseled by policy. The leader from yesterday wasn't with them. Good. He was saving himself for a clean floor and better light. Hunter. The front man lifted a palm. Containment. Kneel. Wrong address, I said. He signaled. Two moved to flank, one lifted the compact launcher, one hugged the case like a relic. They were steady. The kind of steady you rent. I slipped the pouch's last dust onto the seam of the path. The ground sagged half a finger. Enough. The second flank stepped where Stone pretended not to be there, and his stance betrayed him. The launcher coughed. Gel kissed the rock and smoked. The smell said solvent and sleep. I didn't plan to nap. I threw the bell high. It didn't ring. It reminded them what bells are. Foreheads tracked it like cats. I went low. The cord drank light and found a throat. The case-bearer tried for the syringe. My forearm found his wrist and moved it somewhere his brain didn't approve. Back, the front man said, calm. Good nerves. Bad job. They did not back. They doubled down. Discipline makes men obedient and dead. The first fell into the pocket of earth and bounced once. The second tried to fish him out and offered me his elbow. I took the gift and the elbow learned a new angle. The launcher spun into the snow. I towed it over the edge. We listened to it learn falling. Tactics wrong for this altitude, I said. Orders are orders, he said. He meant it. The corridor behind me shadowed. The window forgot light. Cold iron and burnt sugar slid into the room without coming through a door. Now? The knot voice asked. Not yet, I said. Your charity is exhausting, it said, but it didn't open the seam. We broke the surge with the kind of violence you don't brag about because it isn't clever, it's necessary. Knees, fingers. Silence where there should be shouting. Men in good gear making bad shapes on honest stone. When the last one could still hear, I put his hand on the case. Who's calling this? Cardinal, he said, because men always give rank when they run out of lies. Name. He swallowed. Doesn't matter. Agreed. He expected the knife. He got the bell. I set it on his chest. He felt the hum and looked terrified of a sound that hadn't happened yet. Tell him sunrise failed, I said. Tell him the mountain isn't a boardroom. He nodded. Not agreement. Survival. They left what they could carry. They carried what could still follow orders. Blood on snow looks like confession and means nothing to Rock. I cleaned the cord and fed the bell back its silence. The porter found me with a bowl of broth and the eyes of someone who has learned to be disappointed in men kindly. They will come again? He asked. No, I said. He will. He did at dusk. No retinue this time. No boots. A wool coat that knew money. Hands that wanted to look empty and weren't. He stood at the bend like he'd earned the view. You broke my boys, he said, studying the horizon. They bent themselves. You were supposed to be a story we closed. You wrote the wrong ending. He glanced at the window. The temperature in the corridor dropped a fraction. He felt it, the way men with old sins feel church bells in their teeth. Your friend, he said, searching for a word he'd sworn never to use. Encouraged me to choose this conversation. He discouraged you from the other one. A corner of his mouth agreed. Honor, he said, testing it. It fits poorly on you, I said. He faced me fully. Eyes that didn't blink enough. You learned from men who bury their names. They taught you to stand in a door and call it a line. But lines move when the hand holding the chalk dies. Then make me die, I said. Don't hire children. I didn't hire children. I hired believers. Believers follow lies faster. They follow paychecks faster, so we agree. He set a leather folder on the stone. Not the case from Dawn. Paper that wanted to be law. Walk away, he said. Disappear into your mountains. I will instruct Order 13 to reassign. You don't cross my path. I don't cross yours. You don't keep deals, I said. I keep useful ones. Useful to who? To the same person you pretend to serve. Don't borrow his name. You borrowed it first. The window thickened. The knight in the corner took a breath no lung could make. Say it, the knot voice said. The cardinal's eyes flicked. He heard it without admitting hearing it. I came to say a different word, he said. He stepped closer until we could have traded throat beats. Quit. I smiled without teeth. No. He held my gaze for the length of a confession. Then he put 2 fingers on the bell, like a man touching holy water without authorization. The demon offered me a bargain, he said conversationally, as if we were old men arguing chess. Your head for a box of my sins. Imagine that. A thing like him playing at sacraments. What did you answer? I told him I prefer my sins where I can see them. You prefer them on other people. That too. Behind him, the shadow unspooled into suggestion. The smell of iron tugged the room a degree to the left. Are you ready to talk about honor? It asked, in a voice used to ending conversations. The cardinal didn't back up. Whatever else he is not a coward. Not with you. And turned his cheek to me like I had a right to strike it and an obligation not to. You put a price on me. I put a price on trouble. You called it containment. Language is a mercy. Not your kind. He breathed through his nose. Walk away, he said again. Last offer. I don't walk, I said. I stand. Then stand somewhere else. He picked up his folder and turned his back a fraction. The kind of fraction you give a man you'd like to trust, and can't. He left without looking at the corner. Smart. Eye contact is an invitation up here. I waited until the corridor gave his steps back to the mountain, and then sat on the mat with the bell in my lap. My hands remembered the weight of the first one I ever carried. I was younger. The world was not better. Men were the same. Night put its shoulder against the monastery. Around midnight, the seam that lives in stone opened like a polite mouth. Now, the knot voice said. Now. The floor under the cell thinned. Cold reached up the way water will if you let it. I stood and tightened the red string around my finger until it bit. Where? It asked. Under his chair, I said. That's a bad room. I've been in worse. The seam widened to the width of a man who knows what's waiting. Not a door. A choice. I took it. Falling is a kind of prayer. You promise to meet the ground with everything you've got and hope it returns the courtesy. The seam set me down without bruise in a space that smelled like old oak and politics. The floor was polished by sins and shoes. He sat alone at a table carved by men who believed in thunder. Night made his ring shine like an eye. He did not startle. He lowered a pen and let the world finish the line it had been writing for him. You didn't take the path, he said. You took the shortcut. You offered it when you said, quit. He leaned back. The chair creaked in a language older than our argument. You still think you can name terms to people who designed the room. I didn't come to name terms. What did you come for then? To stand in the door while he speaks. The corner behind him forgot to be wood. The smell of iron slid across parchment. He didn't turn. Cardinal, the knot voice said gently, like a knife laid on cloth. We said we'd talk. We are talking, he said, eyes on mine. He doesn't get to be alone with me. No monster does. Then you admit I'm not a monster, I said. You're a tool with opinions. Tools cut both ways. Only when badly handled. The shadow stepped past his shoulder and put a shape like a hand on the table. The oak blackened a thumb's breadth and stopped. It respects age. You asked me for a box, it said. I brought you a mirror instead. He didn't look. I prefer ledgers. You prefer stories where you win. That's every story I pay for. This one is free, it said, and the room lost a degree. He closed his eyes once. It cost him a memory he didn't want to keep. Speak, he said. The thing didn't roar. It accounted. Names without dates, places without coordinates. The kind of list men pretend paperwork is absolution for. It didn't shout damnation. It said debt. Different language, same weight. He listened. He kept his hands flat on the table like the wood might judge him. Halfway through, he opened a drawer and took out a rosary that had seen real grief. He didn't touch it. He placed it within reach. That's the difference between performance and habit. He has both. When the list ended, the shadow leaned away from the table. The chair checked its joints like a body remembering stairs. Now, it said, honor. He didn't ask for mercy. He didn't repent. He did something I didn't expect. He turned his head and looked into the corner. Not fully. Enough. Balance it, he said. The room agreed. You felt it in your teeth. I stepped between them because that's why I was there. Lines are not drawn by chalk. They're drawn by men who will stand exactly where the world doesn't want them. No, I said. Two voices, one born with lungs, one with smoke, answered, move. I didn't. Not here, I said. Not at a table, not in a chair. If the bill comes, it comes where men walk and wine shows up. Not under a ceiling. You want witnesses, the cardinal said. I want weather, I said, the thing considered. He is mine now. He'll be yours tomorrow, I said. Tonight, he's mine. The cardinal barked something that might have been a laugh before it changed plans. Who made you judge? Nobody, I said. Which is why I'm the only one who can do it clean. Silence the length of a heartbeat you loaned to someone else. Then the seam opened in the floor again, this time wide enough for 3. Cold climbed like an agreement. Morning, the thing said. On the steps, the cardinal stood. He didn't pocket the rosary. He left it there like a man marking a page he might or might not return to. He looked at me like a teacher out of patience, and at the corner like a student out of time. Morning, he said. We rose through stone the way memory rises when someone says the right name. The cell accepted us and did not like it. The bell hummed angry and then resigned. I slept 2 hours sitting upright, knife across my knees, because sleep is a tool you use, not a place you go. When I opened my eyes, the sky had blood in it. The mountain approves of red when it wants men to behave. They came at first light. Not boys, not believers. People with mortgages and funerals behind them. The cardinal walked with them, coat open to the cold like temperature was beneath him. He stopped at the bend. I stood at the door. The shadow cooled the threshold. The porter watched from the corridor, hands in sleeves, face like a wall that learned compassion. Here, I said. Here. The cardinal agreed. We didn't drag it out. The thing opened a seam the width of a man's choice. It didn't roar. It offered. He stepped forward without being pushed. Honor, it said. He nodded. Finally. He put one foot over the wrong side of the world and paused. He turned his head toward the bell, not me. Walk away, he said, last time, as if generosity might still win. I don't, I said. He smiled with the top of his mouth and went where men don't return as men. The seam closed like a line drawn straight. The mountain took a long breath. The men with mortgages lowered their weapons and looked at their hands like someone had changed them in the night. I didn't speak. You don't clap at a funeral you invited. The leader from yesterday, finally here, eyes ringed, voice ground down, stepped close enough to smell tea on my breath. What now? He asked. Now you go home, I said. And don't come back. Orders. Find new ones. He searched my face for permission to be smaller. I didn't give it. I gave him emptiness. Men can fit freedom into that if they're stubborn. They left without the folder. I didn't touch it. The porter handed me a pack I hadn't packed. Rope. Food. A map that only makes sense to men who read altitudes. Down? He asked. Down, I said. The window darkened. Cold iron kissed the room. Where? It asked. The cold place, I said. Where I learned to breathe. Alone? Yes. Not tonight, it said. Debt is balanced. I am not your shadow. Good, I said. It opened the seam in the rock that knows my name. It smells like storms caught in ice and prayers whispered into sleeves. I looked at the bell. It looked back without eyes. Keep it, the porter said. I can't. You can, he said and pushed it into my palm. It knows you. I took the bell. I took the cord. I took the red string. I took the steps into the seam until the mountain forgot me on purpose. On the last ledge of light, a voice not born of lungs said what it had been aching to say since the dam. We are quit. Good, I said. And, it added softer, we are not finished. We never are. The world narrowed to ice and breath, and a line that would need drawing again somewhere. Nobody wants a door. I left the mountain before the snow decided to keep me. The porter watched from the arch with his hands inside his sleeves and the bell's weight still in my pocket. The shadow didn't follow. Debts were balanced. For now. Rome remembers you whether you ask it to or not. By midnight, the city had put its wet hand on every stone, and the palazzo windows were mirrors pretending to be eyes. I walked the long way around the river and let the guards at the bronze doors count the seconds between my footsteps. I didn't want them to see me. I wanted them thinking of other things when the real visitor arrived. The cardinal's rooms were where you'd expect them, just high enough to feel untouchable, just close enough to power to smell the wood polish. A secretary dozed with his chin on a ledger. Another man pretended to read a document while listening to the hall. Rituals of confidence. I didn't knock. I waited across the corridor in a dark that wasn't mine and watched the door breathe with the building. At 2:17, the hall cooled a degree. Not the air, The idea of warmth forgot itself. The corridor stretched 1 inch longer, and then remembered its job. Something took shape where the moonlight didn't reach. It didn't open the door. It unmade the distance between wood and room, and stood inside without moving the latch. Carpets ripple when men enter. They held still for him. The cardinal was awake, of course he was. He slept the way accountants do, with one eye on the column, rosary on the table, coat on the chair, pen uncapped like he could sign his way out of weather. He didn't startle. He looked at the knot corner and said, "You found me." The voice answered from everywhere ink dries. "You invited me." He didn't deny it. "You wanted honor." "I still do." He gestured to a chair like hospitality could make rules. "Sit." "We are not men," it said, and remained a height on the edge of vision. The curtains forgot to move. The crucifix over the mantel shone like old bone. "You could have taken me on the mountain," the cardinal said. "He asked me to wait," the thing said. "And you obey him now?" "No," it said. "I obey the word." He wet his lips. "Which word tonight?" "Settle." He let that hang between them like a bell that hadn't rung yet. His hand went to the rosary and stopped. "Say what you came to say." "You sent boys," it said. "You sent men with mortgages. You said containment to mean coffin. You tasted the word honor, with a mouth that learned numbers first." "I did my work," he said. "So did you." "I kept my side of the ledger." "The ledger is imaginary. Not to me." Silence took the room and folded it carefully. Outside, a siren found a different city to worry about. "You don't want confession," the cardinal said softly. "No," it said. "I want parity." He smiled with the top of his mouth and none of his heart. "There is no parity between us." "There is when a man pays," it said. He stood, not defiance, preparation. He smoothed his sleeve as if fabric could bless him. "And if I refuse?" "You don't," it said. "Refusal is a luxury of the ignorant." He took a step toward the mantel and the shadow matched him without moving. "If I go," he said, "I go as a prince." "You go as a weight," it said. His eyes cut to the door, then back to the corner. He knew calling for help would make witnesses, and witnesses make stories, and stories outlive men. He didn't want to be an anecdote. He wanted to be an absence. "Will it hurt?" "No," it said. "Not the part that matters." The room changed shape on the floor. A seam as thin as a hair, then a thread, then a black line that refused to shine. The carpet didn't split. It agreed. "Last chance," I said from the door. He didn't turn. "You don't belong in this room." I belonged on the steps. I belong where the debt is counted. He breathed out once, as if air could carry a prayer for him. "Walk away," he said. "You won a mountain. Leave me my ceiling. You put a price on men and called it paper. I put order on disorder. You fed it." We looked at each other the way men do when they've had enough of pretending. He put his fingers on the edge of the desk like it could keep him in the world. The shadow's shape thickened into something like a hand. "Look at me," it said. He did. Whatever he saw wasn't for me. His mouth went very small. Then he nodded once, as if to an equal at the end of a bargain. "Say it," he whispered. The thing did not roar. It spoke like cold iron being poured. "We will talk of honor, Cardinal." The seam widened to the width of a choice. He stepped to it like a man approaching a threshold he used to own. He didn't ask for mercy. He adjusted his coat. "Tell your hunters," he said without looking back, "that I went like a man." "They'll decide that for themselves," I said. "They already have," he said, and let the wrong side of the floor take him. The seam closed, as if a line had finally been drawn straight. The rosary on the desk vibrated once and went still. The crucifix above the mantel threw a short shadow that didn't belong to anything in the room, then remembered itself. The curtains remembered wind. The temperature remembered being a number. The shadow lingered the length of one breath. "We are quit," it said. "For tonight," I answered. "For tonight," it agreed, and unmade the space it had used. I stood alone with the bell heavy in my pocket and the city scratching at the window like a cat that doesn't love you. In the corridor, the secretary stirred and wrote a time in a margin without knowing why. I didn't touch the rosary. Some objects choose their own hands. I left the way the visitor came, through a distance that forgot to be there. On the steps outside, Rome looked up at the sky and pretended dawn wasn't coming. My phone buzzed once. No number. One sentence. Order 13 dissolved. Stand down. I put the phone face down on the stone and listened for lies. The mountain inside me stayed quiet. I walked until the river decided to be a road, and the road remembered it was just water wearing a mask. When the city finally let me breathe, I said it out loud to the dark, because the dark keeps better secrets than daylight. Debt balanced. The night didn't answer. It didn't need to.